All right, welcome everybody to the Jim Acosta Show. It is Monday. Trump is sounding more out of control as president every day. He is still not pledging to follow the Constitution when it comes to due process in this country. And he is still giving evasive answers as to whether he is supposed to uphold the Constitution as president, when the answer is obviously, absolutely, of course. As you can see, my first guest today is Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He is the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me.
I just wanted to start right there because, honestly, there's a lot going on, and we could start in, half a dozen different places. But when the president of the United States is asked point blank whether you're supposed to uphold the Constitution, I mean, Kristen Welker on Meet the Press asked, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president? And Trump says, quote, I don't know. I have to respond by saying, again, and this is what he says, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they're going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. Just speaking live right now to our audience on Substack and YouTube, what's your response to that? Because, he takes an oath as president of the United States to protect and defend the Constitution. He should know this.
Yeah, what it says to me, Jim, is if Donald Trump was an 8th grade civics student, he'd fail civics, basic American civics. I mean, this is not a hard question. We had a revolution 250 years ago, which will, of course, celebrate a lot in Virginia being one of the birthplaces of it, but to not have a king. And the idea that the Constitution says we got 3 co-equal branches. Yes, you're chief executive, but what is paramount beyond any single person is the Constitution of the United States. And his answer was an embarrassment. And frankly, I know you probably feel the same way. If any of my Republican friends aren't willing to say, to just call him out on this, they would also fail Civics 101.
Yeah. And a lot of this has to do with, obviously trials for migrants and so on. And he keeps floating this idea of no trials for migrants, that you could just scoop people up off the streets in the United States and remove them from the country without any kind of due process. That's not what the Constitution says. He clearly wants to remain on this collision course, I think, with the Supreme Court over this. And just earlier today, he was speaking to reporters and he said the courts all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they said you have to have trials. We're going to have 5 million trials. It doesn't work. He's talking about how many people he wants to remove from the country and how he says you can't have trials through that process. What happens, Senator, if Trump continues to defy the Constitution and the courts in this fashion? What happens? Do we know?
Well, what happens is we have a constitutional crisis. And I've thought we were going to either come to this when he refuses the Supreme Court, or frankly, the other place was when he was going to continue to refuse Congress's ability to, appropriate and spend money. He's on a collision course with the Constitution on both of these tracks. And this due process requirement, which again shouldn't surprise anybody that has read our Constitution or looked at any kind of the status of legal decisions over the last 75 years, that says, you got, especially if you are here in even under colorable legal status, you got a right to due process. You don't get swept off, by some masked ICE agent and get taken away. I tell you, one of the most heartbreaking things, Zooms I've had in the last 100 days has been, I had 55 Latino priests and pastors on their phone and are on the Zoom saying, hey, Senator, what do we do if they come into our church? Now, so far, we've not had the ICE folks go into churches themselves, but I don't think we can, I could not give those pastors the assurance that wouldn't happen. I've said, you got to call me, you got to call Tim Kaine. We will be there in force. But the fact that this kind of threat is even possibly out there scares the hell out of me.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I were just chatting before we got started here. And I guess just to broaden it out, I mean, you were saying that, and you've been in government for a long time in the Senate, governor of Virginia and so on. In these first 105 days, you've never seen anything like this, what we're going through as a country right now.
It is absolutely, it's mind blowing, and I think you're starting to see the American people turn. I don't think they expected somebody to grab people off the street, or they wanted to see prices come down. And obviously this crazy tariff policy is sending things the other way. The fact that we've managed to piss off some of our closest allies in 100 days, how you turn Canada into an enemy in 105 days, mind-blowing. But the thing that's really, I guess, so concerns me, and I get criticized for being too bipartisan, but the fact that too many of my Republican friends have been quietly saying, Mark, we think this is awful, but they've not raised their voices yet. When we see everything from the Signal Gate to the firing of some of our intelligence officers, a whole series of things that I just thought folks would say already, this has gone too far.
Yeah. When you talk about people being just swept up off the street, I should note we're going to be talking with Juan Lima a little later on in the program. His parents down in Georgia were picked up off the street. They're from Brazil. They've been in this country for 26 years. They had overstayed their visa, but they were picked up by ICE and sent off to a detention facility outside of Atlanta. And they're just stuck there in limbo. And it's just one of the horrors that we've seen so far of this administration. And you mentioned Signalgate. I want to get to that in just a second. But when you talk about Republicans not wanting to call Trump out, obviously they're running in fear of him right now. Does it make you question whether or not you should be as bipartisan? That perhaps the right thing to do is to hold up some of these nominations and kind of. I know that's maybe not your style as much, Senator, but what are your thoughts? I mean,
here's my thoughts on one. Unfortunately, because we changed the rules 10 years ago, literally, the ability to hold up the nominations amounts to holding it up for 2 hours, and we're doing that. And I am voting against the vast majority of the Trump appointees. But in our system, we got three things at this point. If you're in the minority party, if you're part of a group that's resisting, we can litigate. And there's lots of cases being taken to the courts. And so far, overwhelmingly, we've been successful. We can protest. And we see days of action and protests taking place all over the country. I got to tell you, I was in far southwest Virginia a couple of weeks back, and I had 150 people in Smith County at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning. When I was a popular governor, I couldn't get 150 people at 10:30 in the morning in a rural Smith County. Or what we can do is try to convince folks that they are voting the wrong way, and these are my colleagues. And the thing I would just make the case is, Jim, and I get people will press against me, and that's their right, but we don't have to change 20 people's minds in the Senate. We got 47 Democratic senators. We need 4, 5, 6 Republican senators to vote their conscience. And I do feel that part of my job is to keep trying to work on them, because a lot of these folks, I do believe they care about our country. I do believe they care about our country's national security. But I get the fact that their unwillingness to speak up so far has been pretty darn disappointing.
Yeah, I saw that you, when you were talking about Mike Waltz for National Security Advisor, of course, he was pulled out of the, I should say for UN Ambassador, he was pulled out of the job of a National Security Advisor by Trump last week. He's being put up for UN Ambassador. You were saying over the weekend that it's going to be a brutal confirmation hearing for Mike Waltz to get that job as UN Ambassador. Should he even get that job? I mean, would you vote for him at this point as UN Ambassador, given what we saw with Signalgate? I mean, it sounds like, how do we know he's going to be handling that information properly once he's at the level of UN Ambassador?
I try to give everybody a fair shot. I don't know how he could convince me, in light of his careless attitude towards classified information, that he can go represent America to the rest of the world. But in many ways, the only thing I'll give Waltz credit for was he at least acknowledged he screwed up. Pete Hegseth, who was on that call, who then made a similar, if not more egregious mistake when he shared this same information with his wife, with his brother who was on the payroll at the DOD, his lawyer who was on the payroll, and God knows who else. You talk about somebody that should be fired right away. It's Pete Hegseth. It's Tulsi Gabbard, who was the director of national intelligence, who was also on some of these calls, who undermines the integrity and calls out our intelligence workforce every day. I've dared Hegseth literally for the last couple of weeks, come down to Norfolk, Virginia, which is where our naval base is, where the USS Truman, the aircraft carrier that from where these planes were launched that attacked the Houthis in Yemen, and go and talk to the friends and families of those sailors and explain how that information wouldn't have put their loved ones in harm's way. Nobody in their right mind could explain that. And I had a town hall down there, and people were pissed off, and they had every right to be pissed off. So Waltz, one down. Hegseth needs to go. Gabbard needs to go. We are made less safe every day these individuals stay in these jobs.
Yeah, and I do want to move on to other topics, but it sounds like Trump is in no mood to fire Pete Hegseth, and it sounds as though he's given up Mike Waltz as sort of a scalp to critics in D.C., but he's not going to give up on Pete Hegseth, and it's primarily it seems for that reason. He doesn't want people around town to have scalps, even if it means keeping somebody like Pete Hegseth in that job, which he was unqualified for that job when he was nominated in the first place. But Trump wants a culture warrior there.
Well, Jim, look at it. You've got not only this inept behavior with classified information, you've got clearly a fact that couldn't manage a 2-car funeral who's now trying to manage the largest institution in our government, the Defense Department. And I tell you, the Pentagon's in Virginia. We got a lot of military installations. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get some feedback about chaos at the Pentagon or declining morale. That kind of chaos and that kind of declining morale doesn't make us safer. You combine that with Vladimir Putin playing Trump like a fiddle on negotiations or no negotiations about Ukraine, and you've got a combination here that again makes America a heck of a lot less safe. And frankly, I think we got to keep the pressure on, because we just can't wait till 2026 to make the changes in the House and the Senate that are going to be needed to try to bring some responsibility back.
Yeah, and maybe you can tell from your perch on the Intelligence Committee, is it the case that we just have administration officials all the time using unsecured messaging apps? And that's right. Apparently, Mike Waltz was using this other version of Signal called Telemessage, which is a Signal-like application. A Reuters photograph appeared to show Waltz using it at a cabinet meeting. I'm sure you picked up on that. And according to Reuters, this telemessage has been hacked too. According to the tech site 404 Media, they've reported that they've spoken with a hacker who was able to hack into telemessage. And so it sounds as though, these apps are not safe. And it seems like a bunch of these officials are using it. Do we know how widespread this is?
Well, first of all, it's even gotten worse. This telemessage, I think literally in the last hour, has been pulled off the market because it was hacked so many times. Now, let me take a minute here.
Forgive me for asking Signal, a wonky question, but yeah.
I know it's a wonky question, but using Signal,
yeah,
which is encrypted, is better than using your normal cell phone. And that's, or using traditional telephone networks. And as you know, Jim, I was a cell phone guy for 25 years before I was.
Right.
So yeah. I'm sorry to nerd out, but
that's
Signal
okay.
is safer, but it is not an appropriate platform for classified information. There are secure networks that anyone who's on the Intelligence Committee, anyone who works for the military, anybody who works for the CIA, you are told day one, if this is classified or sensitive information, do not put it on a platform that is not protected. So with Signal, you've got something that is not only not classified, but this add-on service, which in a weird way, Waltz may have been using. Now I'm getting even nerdier. Waltz may have been using to try to preserve the record for another part of the law, the Federal Records Act.
Oh, boy.
To try to preserve that record, which is also the law as well. But the fact that he didn't do basic cyber hygiene 101 means that it was a double foul, and it is. Yeah, it's crazy. I will, and again, I should be good enough and just stop there, but I got to acknowledge one last thing.
Sure.
This has been a problem for 15 years. We need to make it easier if you're in the military or in the intelligence community to have classified communications. There's a lot of these phones that are clunky and old, and I got one put at my house, so I can have classified communications if need be, share half the time it doesn't work. That still is not an excuse. That is not an excuse, though, Jim, that if you are the national security advisor to not be smart enough to know the rules, you don't do it on a non-classified network, and you sure as heck don't even plug in another application that has been hacked as much as this one that now is being literally taken off the market.
Well, I appreciate you nerding out with us, because we don't mind nerding out here on this program, Senator. And I got to ask you another sort of tech-related question, and I know you've been on top of this. This is according to the Washington Post about Elon Musk and these questions about Starlink. The Washington Post reported that the past several weeks might have been tumultuous or even existential for a lot of U.S. businesses caught up in the trade wars, but they've been pretty darn good for Starlink, the satellite company owned by Elon Musk, after years of regulatory holdups. This, according to the Washington Post, Starlink reached distribution deals in March with two giant internet providers in India, and won approval in neighboring Pakistan as well. Another of America's major trade partners, Vietnam, waived a rule that required Starlink to partner with a domestic company. So Starlink's looking pretty good these days. What's going on with this? What do you want to find out? Yeah.
And again, there are a dozen of us who've written the president and said, we need a full investigation into this, because you left out, for example, one of the countries, Bangladesh, where at least the report says you had the Bangladeshi trade representative meeting with our trade representative, then suddenly getting taken down the hallway to meet with the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, inside the White House, where they supposedly had to call the Bangladeshi president and say, you want to get, tariff relief, you got to look at Starlink. So it's not just potentially India or Pakistan, it's potentially Bangladesh, Vietnam, South Africa. And the part that is so gross, we all know there's a lot of corruption in plain sight coming out of this administration. But if this is happening inside the White House, inside Blair House, where Elon Musk had a meeting with the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and making these kind of asks, why in the first place would the Doge guy, who's supposed to be about government efficiency, be meeting with foreign leaders? But if there is evidence that he is using this to force countries to use his satellite service, Starlink, you either got to get an investigation, or you laugh, or you cry, or you pull out your hair and you say, nothing in American history has been anywhere as clearly a gross violation. Now we got to make sure this is factually accurate, and that's why we've asked for an investigation. But if true, this could be some of the worst kind of graft I've ever seen. Almost the adding insult to injury is doing it inside the White House.
Yeah, and can you get Elon Musk to testify? Obviously, you can't, unless you have a Republican chairman agree to call him up to testify on this.
Amen. And it's just,
and they're not going to do it. Yeah,
it's mind blowing. It is. I'm trying to think about it. I know this is a family podcast.
Oh, you can say it.
So I won't use. No, it's like it's crazy. It's bullshit. Why in the heck? Yeah. The idea that the richest man in the world is suddenly extracting or potentially extracting other nations to use his satellite service. And I got nothing against the satellite service, but that ought to be able to be competitive on its own, not using, the influence with the president of the United States to extract favors.
But this is the way Trump has been operating since he got back into the Oval Office. He acts like a mob boss. He says to these law firms, I won't go after your law firm if you agree to help on pro bono work on this issue or that pet issue. He's going after the universities. I won't go after this university or that university if they drop DEI. It's a quid. I mean, he got impeached for a quid pro quo. This is the quid pro quo administration. That's what it looks like.
And I went to law school. Thank God I never practiced law. I was lucky enough to get into the cell phone stuff and was blessed to do well. But I've been so disappointed with some of the wealthiest law firms in America that bent the knee. Now, thank goodness you're seeing other law firms grow a spine. I went to Harvard for law school. I've never given them a dime. I actually may write them a small contribution this year because they actually said they're not going to roll over. But it says something that some of our wealthiest universities and wealthiest law firms would rather give in than stand up for the principles that in good times they all claim is the core of their mission.
Yeah. And I've talked about it on the show time and again. It's when you bend the knee. It's when you pay the mob boss in the intimidation racket. That's what encourages the behavior. That's why it continues. It seems to me. I mean, I think most people can figure that out, and they've seen this. This is why people are going to town halls and are so hopping mad that they're getting dragged out. And I guess that happened last night at Mike Lawler's town hall. It's just going nuts left and right. I guess, Senator, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you about the intensifying campaign in Gaza. Netanyahu said today that he's on the eve of a forceful entry into Gaza. That's the way he described it. He says it's time to launch the concluding moves, he put it. He says, we are not done. We are before the finish line. Your thoughts on that? It sounds as though the Palestinians are going to be relocated and moved in an even smaller area that they've been in. The conditions have been reported as just extremely dire. What's been your thought on this?
Well, my thought, I think, like most, clearly, post-October 7th, Israel has a right to defend itself. But now, a year and a half later, a year or more, 18 months, the notion of continuing conflict in Gaza, beyond the tragedy of what's happening to the Palestinians, I'm not sure how it even necessarily helps Israel. What we have is an opportunity right now with the president going to the region, going to Saudi Arabia. If we could get a ceasefire in Gaza, if we could get the hostages returned, that would open up the opportunity for Saudi Arabia that wants to recognize Israel to frankly build a bigger alliance in addition to those countries already recognized Israel within the Abraham Accords, to actually have a united front against the real bad guys in the region, which are Iran. And I just can't understand, why the Israeli government, the logic of this. And frankly, you hear the Israeli intelligence services echoing the same, the opportunity to finally get a recognition from Saudi Arabia, the keeper of the holiest sites in Islam, to have that kind of recognition of Israel take place. That would be in regional peace's interest. We could actually make sure those countries like Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis come in and help on the rebuilding of Gaza. It is such a missed opportunity. And instead, to have ongoing conflict for both, obviously, the Palestinians, but you also are starting to even see some of the IDF forces raise some concerns here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other thought that comes to mind, Senator, is, could we reach a point where, you could see this inspiring terrorist attacks around the world in the United States? Are those concerns that you have, that the longer this goes on, that it could get more dire, get more desperate, result in that kind of activity where, the intelligence community, obviously, I would think they would have to be thinking about that kind of a possibility.
We have to look at radicalization, whether it takes place abroad or whether it takes place at home. And there are things that, we always have to be concerned. Let me give you another one that I think that a smart president, and Trump uniquely could do something here, and that is the conflict in Sudan. More people die in Sudan every day than Gaza and Ukraine combined. And, this has been in chaos for the last 2.5 years, a civil war, neither side. There are no good guys here. And the folks that are happening the most are the Sudanese people who are being starved to death and butchered. One side has been supported by Saudi Arabia. The other side has been supported by the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. If we could actually get both of those sides to pull out of that conflict and bring peace, or bring at least a ceasefire into Sudan, even if Donald Trump had to get credit for it, that would be enormously powerful in a continent like Africa, where, frankly, America has for way too long paid way too little attention.
Yeah, no question about it. And I'll let you go in just a sec. I got to ask you, because you said earlier that you're running into people who are pissed off at town halls. You've been in Democratic politics a long time, flirted with the idea of running for president. You get mentioned from time to time about this stuff. What is your preference in terms of where the Democratic Party should be right now? Is it too feisty, not feisty enough? I mean, there are a lot of Democrats, rank and file Democrats, a lot of people just in the grassroots. They're so pissed. They're so hopping mad. They do see a lot of bullshit, as you called it. And they don't know what to do, and they're tearing their hair out. They couldn't be more frustrated.
I see that. I do think you're seeing stronger resistance from Capitol Hill, from both sides. I also think what we got to do, I think Trump's going to implode. But what I want to be part of is how we put forward, frankly, an optimistic Democratic message that says, okay, we can be pro-growth, we can be pro-innovation. Sometimes we got to acknowledge that maybe we've been too regulatory. I'm a big advocate of broadband deployment, and the fact that we got $42 billion in the first year of the Biden administration and didn't put a bit of fiber out because we had so much bureaucracy was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
If we would have laid that out, I think a lot of rural communities would have voted for Vice President Harris. So how do you get that optimistic pro-growth, pro-innovation, less regulatory, yet still recognizes one of our strengths in this country is the diversity of America? Recognizing the fact that we're still the only country in the world where people will literally put their lives on the line to try to take a little piece of the life that you and I take for granted every day. We're the only place where, you can come first generation and be American. I could move to Italy tomorrow. I'm never going to be Italian. And that kind of optimistic, forward-leaning Democratic Party that's still based in fairness, but does recognize, there have been mistakes we've made, but we got to be forward-leaning. I think the country, not just the activists, but I hear an awful lot of folks that supported Trump that said, hey, I didn't hire this guy. I didn't hire somebody who not only not bring down prices, but also piss off half the world.
And he's dressed up he's dressed up as the Pope. Yesterday he's dressed up as Darth Vader. I don't know what he's doing. And you were saying you think he's going to implode. I mean, do you mean like he's like not going to make it all 4 years? Because there are days when I think that he seems a little nuts this time around. A little more nuts.
I think the American people are turning on him. But what I worry about, Jim, is some of this stuff, the structural damage is so great. I mean, it's going to be a long time before our neighbors, the Canadians, are going to ever view us as allies again.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long time before the Australians, who we're trying to build submarines with, and we whacked them with a tariff, even though we've got a trade surplus. The fact that we've been spending 25 years saying, hey, be careful with China, and now more countries think China is a more responsible trading partner than America. Those damages can't be undone by a change in policy. And when you have a lot of Americans, who's going to want to go serve in the federal government going forward after the damage he's done, impugning the credibility of our workforce? A little known fact, this is federal recognition of Public Service Week. Who's going to want to join the federal government, which is public service that should be celebrated with this kind of structural damage being done?
Yeah, no, I mean, why would you want to work for the federal government if people like Doge can get access to your personal data or toss you by the wayside for some AI program? I mean, you raise a lot of questions. Senator Warner, we've taken up so much time. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much. And I do want to say, go Commanders. I'm glad they're coming back to D.C. I'm sure as a Virginian, you're glad they're at least coming out of Maryland.
At least coming out of Maryland. And you know, we all got to stay in the fight. We're a better country than what we've been getting. We will take this country back.
All right, Senator Warner, thanks a lot. Really appreciate the time. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, thanks so much. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. And, I think he's right. And it was interesting right before we got started with the interview. He said to me, and that's why I brought it up during the show. He said, he said he's been in government a long time, been doing this for a long time. He said in the first 105 days, and he said it again during the interview, in the first 105 days of this administration, he's just never seen anything like this. And that's what you're hearing from a lot of longtime serving members of Congress, people who are experienced hands here in Washington. This is what they see. I want to take a pretty dramatic turn here and get back to the issue of the mass deportations in this country. You saw Trump earlier today talking about, how you can't have trials for all of these migrants that are being swept up and pulled up off the street and removed from this country. I want to bring in Juan Lima because Juan has a very important story to tell us about. Juan, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the program. I know you and I were speaking earlier today. Your parents, who have been in this country for 26 years, I think is what you were telling me earlier today.
Yes, sir.
They were taken into custody by ICE. When did this happen? And can you just tell us the story?
Yes, sir. So just last week, as my parents were getting up in the morning, getting ready to go to work, some men in just normal clothing, unmarked vehicles pulled up at my parents' house and knocked on their front door. Of course, as any immigrant like myself growing up in this country and the current climate that we're in, we were terrified anytime someone comes knocking on our door that we don't know. And from there, they apprehended my parents, had them arrested, took them to ICE headquarters in downtown Atlanta, and from there transferred to a detention center 3 hours away from where I am. And as my attorneys have said, is considered the next step to help, just due to the inhumane treatment. And of course, as you said, Jim, they've been in this country for 26 years. We just celebrated in April of 1999 is when they came to this country with no other intention but to build a future. They didn't even come for themselves. They came for me to help me have a future, and did everything possible by, as I'd like to say, that they came here with nothing, but yet gave me everything. And so,
and Juan, you were saying that the ICE officers, they were wearing normal clothes. They were using unmarked vehicles.
Yes, sir.
That's awfully strange. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So myself and our attorneys, we still have no idea. My parents were not told at all as to why this happened. They had no warrant. And so they just told my parents to collect their belongings, whether it just be, their passports, et cetera, and had them escorted to downtown Atlanta.
And they had been in this country for 26 years. Basically, they had overstayed their visa. And so they must have been in the system in that fashion. But I mean, if they hadn't committed a crime, if they hadn't, Trump's been talking about, the people in the White House have been talking about going after gang members and criminals and people like, it sounds like your parents didn't do anything other than just be upstanding members of their community. I think you were saying that they're involved in their church.
Yes, sir.
What about all that?
Yes, sir. And my parents, again, I'm not a social justice worker or a professional by any stretch or means when it comes to immigration law. I'm just a son just trying to advocate for their parents. And my parents, for all the 26 years that we've been here in this country, they've been ones that have constantly given back to their community, volunteers at our local church, Bible study teachers, worship leaders, and never expected anything in return. They have also paid taxes all 26 years that we've been here in this country, knowing that they'll never get a single dime out of Social Security. And so these are the kinds of real Americans that I believe that we need to kind of embrace. They have zero criminal record. And so we're kind of left here with questions. We don't know why. But even in the midst of the tragedy, in the midst of the chaos, we still have hope. That through this, we hope that our story can help inspire others that even though, as you know, under our current administration, people don't realize that this is actually happening. People
Yeah.
that are beloved by their community are being completely snatched, taken away without any notice.
And the other thing you were saying is you were speaking with your father, or you spoke with your parents at this detention facility, and they're running out of space
Yes, sir.
at the facility that he's at right now. That your parents are being held at it right now.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Up until last night, my dad didn't even have a mattress to sleep on. He was sleeping on the floor on a mattress. And my dad said that every single day there, and especially over this past night, they'll have hundreds that choose to self-deport and are shipped away to local airport and sent off to their home countries.
Without
And
any
many
due
of them don't
process.
have help from the outside.
And have your parents gone in front of a judge? Has anything like that happened?
No, sir. So we're currently in the process right now of achieving a bond hearing, and that due to their good character, their merit, the fact that they are so admired by our community, that we are fighting for them to be released. And so, which is why we started a GoFundMe and to be able to help pay for bond and attorney fees and help keep up with their rent, et cetera, et cetera. And in just under 5 hours, we were able to raise $25,000 to be able to help keep up with all the fees and things that we've received so far. And anything given over that is to help keep my parents here. And so that's what we're advocating for.
And they were just living in this country, doing their thing.
Yes,
And
sir.
and then one day they get grabbed. I mean, and the people who are watching this, you can see, I mean, these are your folks. You got to be so worried about them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can't imagine what that's like to go through.
Yeah. And it's been difficult even in the phone calls initially, when we didn't even know what the situations were, how they were being treated. It was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. And I know that there are hundreds and thousands of immigrants in our country that feel that same kind of fear and anxiety that I'm waking up with and going to bed with every night now.
Yeah. And you're a DACA kid.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I was brought here when I was 8 months old. And so
Wow.
all I've ever known is this country. And all I've ever known is the community that I've been surrounded by. And so it hurts my heart and that my parents are treated this way, but I know that there are so many others that are also enduring the same thing.
And so when Trump and some of these other people in the White House and administration are saying they're going after the gang members, they're going after the criminals, what is your response to that?
That look who's in front of you. Or do these look like criminals to you? Do these look like gangbangers? No, these are beloved people by their community. These are moms and dads, aunts and uncles, loved ones. And so I pray that through stories like ours that people would wake up and realize that what mass media and what so many people have spread as lies is the vast minority of, in terms of what we've actually seen of. My parents have described to me that vast majority of the people that are at these detention centers are people that don't have a criminal record, people that were just caring about their regular lives.
Yeah. And your parents brought you here from Brazil for a better life.
Yes, sir.
That's basically it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And because of them, I have access to the education. I was able to become a minister. I went to seminary, and I was able to have access to all these opportunities because they wanted a better future for me, something that they weren't given when they were growing up.
And Juan, I see you have an American flag behind you.
Yes, sir. This is in my living room, and because I haven't even been to Brazil ever since I've been here since I was 8 months old. This is the only country I've ever known. My parents have lived more years in the United States than they ever did in Brazil. And so these are things that we know they break our hearts, but we know that in the end, we're still believing for a miracle. We're still believing that as we continue to work with attorneys and do our best on this side, that we're going to receive justice for them.
Yeah. But right now you're in limbo. You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yes, sir. Yep. Every day is a journey. But even along the journey, we've had so many loved ones, hundreds of people that have reached out and have constantly been in loving support, saying that no matter what it takes, we're going to try and do our best to get them released.
And I guess today they were saying over at the White House that, well, we'll give you $1,000 if you self-deport. Is that of interest to you or your parents? I mean, to me, when I look at them, when I hear you guys are Americans. I mean, maybe you don't have the documentation to say it, but you're Americans.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This is the only country I've ever known.
Hmm.
This is the only people I've ever known. And so my parents, more than anything, no matter what the system or what our country tries to tell them that that there's some alien number, -124, whatever it may be. No, they're my parents. They're my superheroes. And I would hate for us to be separated because of how this system was created.
Yeah. I mean, and what's your message to the government?
My message is, look at people like my parents that are loving. They have constantly been contributors towards society and that are beloved by their community, by their church, by their friends, both Americans, Brazilians, and multiple ethnicities alike. And are these the kind of people that we want to just say we want to get rid of? No, these are the people that we need to embrace. These are the people that have constantly given and never asked for anything in return.
Yeah. And my dad came from Cuba and worked a blue collar job for 40 years, is now living in retirement. And, I just can't imagine something like this happening to him. I guess I put myself in your shoes thinking about all of this.
Yes, sir.
What did your parents do all these years while they were raising you in this country?
Yes, sir. So they have their own house cleaning business, and that's what they've been doing for nearly 25 years since they've been here.
Wow.
And which multiple of their clients have been ones that have sent in letters as character witnesses. As they even entrusted them in their own homes for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And again, did things as normal U.S. citizens.
Yeah. Because that's the question I ask a lot of folks when this debate comes up, when this issue comes up, is, a lot of the people who come to this country and try to start a new life and come from places like Cuba or Brazil or Latin America, they're doing jobs that a lot of Americans don't want to do, which is why our parents got employed. Your parents ran a house cleaning business. My dad worked in a grocery store for 40 years, worked in grocery stores for 40 years. These are jobs that some Americans just don't want to do. But through their hard work, they can put together a good life here and raise kids who can have an even better life. I mean, and to me, that's the American dream.
Yes, sir.
That's what it's all about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. And all we are is we are the sons and daughters of immigrants, every single one of us. And so I'd hate for my parents to not receive that same treatment, that they came here to this country with a dream to be able to build a greater future for themselves. And they love this country. They love this country with all their heart. We celebrate 4th of July more than we do celebrate our Brazilian independence because we love this country. And we know that God hasn't forsaken our country. And so we know that even in the midst of all this, again, this is more than just a political issue. This is a human issue. And that all of us, we're all the sons and daughters of immigrants, just like myself. And I pray that they receive the justice that they need.
Well, Juan Lima, I really appreciate you speaking with me, and please keep us posted on your parents. I'm so very sorry that they're going through this. I know this. This is not who America is. People might say, well, that's who America is right now. That may be true. That may be true. I don't believe personally that this is who America is.
Yes, sir.
And you just have to hang in there and please keep us posted on how they're doing it. And God bless you and your family.
Yes,
my
sir.
heart goes out to you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan. Okay. Take care. Yeah. I mean, that to me, what does the American dream mean to people if we're just going to grab people who've been in this country for 26 years and lock them up like criminals when all they've done is work hard, pay their taxes, raise kids? I mean, you heard from Juan there. Does anybody detect a Brazilian accent? No. I mean, he's as American as anybody else, and his home may have been of mixed status, as we call it, in talking about these issues. But I mean, a lot of this comes back to who do we want to be as a country? Who do we want to be as Americans? Do we want to be that America, the scoop people up off the street without due process, unmarked cars, plain clothes, officers, throw them in jail, don't know when you're going to get out, don't know what's going to happen to you? Are we that country? Is that who we want to be? Let me bring in Michael Cohen, because usually we do Michael Monday a little earlier, doing a little later today. Michael, a couple of
Good to see
questions
you,
for you.
Jim. Boy,
Good to see you.
what a terrible, terrible story.
Isn't
And
that-
you know, when you turn around and you ask that question, it's to those of us who come from families that are, we'll say, of mixed status. My father, right, is a Canadian via Poland after the war. My wife, right, Ukrainian via Italy and Israel. I mean, let's be serious about it. I don't really know too many people who are more than 2 generations removed from being, we'll call it, mixed immigration status. It's not, Jim, it's nauseating any which way you think about it.
Yeah. And, you know, Trump is talking about, I mean, you know, we'll talk about the bright, shiny objects. And he wants us to talk about the bright, shiny objects. But I also want to talk about what we are becoming as a country. When the president of the United States won't say whether he's supposed to uphold the Constitution. My God, yes, man, you are supposed to uphold the Constitution. You are the president.
Jim,
That's
twice.
the oath of office.
The man has taken the oath of office not once but twice. Okay, maybe you don't get it right on the first time, but there's always the second time. I mean, did you not understand it the first time? Okay, say no. The second time, you better understand it the second time. You're the leader of the free world, for God's sakes. If we're really even free anymore.
Yeah, and we're all supposed to do cartwheels today, Michael, because apparently Trump said on Meet the Press yesterday that he's going to be an 8-year president. I'll be a 2-term president, he said. I always thought that was very important. Trump told moderator Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. Oh gosh, I feel so much. Don't you feel so much better now that he's put that to rest?
I absolutely do not. Let me be very clear. Knowing Trump for a decade and a half, better than all of these animals and enablers around him, I want to be very clear about something.
Yeah.
First and foremost, it doesn't mean anything, because let me tell you what he's doing. It should be obvious to people, but certainly to his MAGA support, his ecosystem there, they don't even want to think about it. What he's doing is he's testing the water. Plain and simple. He wants to see how it's going to fare as, we'll call it, a poll. And obviously he realized this is a very, very unpopular thing for him to do. It didn't poll well at all. People on both sides of the aisle, I wrote my Substack, in fact, on it first thing this morning at 5:30 a.m., where not only, obviously, Democrats are 90% against it, independents are like 60% against it, but even Republicans are 20% against it. It comes out to like an average of 70% of our country believe that it is absolutely 100% improper for the president of the United States to want to stay on longer than what the 22nd Amendment permits.
And my God, he can barely get through a day in his second term. I mean, you know, I kind of wonder if they keep putting out these memes of him as Darth Vader and the Pope and everything to distract us from the fact that, I mean, he just looks tired. He doesn't look like he's all there sometimes. I mean, you know, I don't even know why we're talking about a third term. Is he going to get through the second term? He thinks that Kilmar Abrego Garcia has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles, when that's clearly not the case. That's clearly a Photoshop. I mean, he just doesn't, you know, is he all there?
He is all there. And I want people to stop turn around and like, oh, he has dementia. He
Yeah.
does not.
Yeah.
What he has is IDGAS. All right. That's what he has. IDGAS.
I don't give a
I
shit.
don't give a shit. All right.
Yes.
He doesn't give a shit about Juan or his family. He doesn't give a shit about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He doesn't give a shit about Jim Acosta or Michael Cohen. He doesn't give a shit about the Constitution or what it says.
And he doesn't give a shit about his vice president either, by the way, because he keeps floating Marco Rubio. He did this again yesterday. He floated Marco Rubio for president in 2028. In addition,
he's not going
JD
to back.
Vance.
By the way, he's not going to back JD Vance on the next go around. You know,
I love the loyalty.
Oh, yes, exactly. Like First Avenue in Manhattan, one way, right? Let me be very clear. He's testing the waters, and what you're going to see is not the end of this test. He is going to do it little by little by little. You don't destroy something by just smashing it in one specific
And
moment.
I won't be shocked if next week he does a rally or a speech, or the week after that, or he goes on Hannity and he floats the third term thing all over again.
You know why I love Michael Mondays, Jim? Because you're spot freaking on. It's like you're taking the words out of my mouth. It's a fact. You are 100% correct.
We should mark this moment. We should mark it's Cinco de Mayo, because he tweeted out the Taco Bowl thing earlier today. It's Cinco de Mayo, and we should just all remember it was on May the 5th, the year of our Lord 2025, when we said that he's going to do it again. He's going to float this thing again. He's going to do it.
Of course he's going to. I mean, can we speak for a moment about what's even the right word when they haven't even started? Well, they just started the conclave, right? Yeah. They're looking obviously for a new pope. They, just literally are burying Pope Francis, who from every account was a decent human being. Yeah. He was a decent man, right? Representing,
anyway.
And probably, yes. And the blasphemous sort of promotion of superimposing Trump's face onto a body dressed as the Pope, and then the gall, the unmitigated gall, where Trump comes out and he says, I didn't even know. Listen up.
He says they can't take a joke.
Right. Yeah. It's first of all, it's not a joke, but he even turns around and says that he didn't even know that this thing went up. Let me be very clear. It was posted on your site, on your Truth Social account. So are you telling me somebody else has access to your account?
Is Dan Scavino allowed to post things on his Truth Social without Donald Trump knowing about it?
Sure, not without knowing when Trump tells him what to do. And I know this because myself and this guy named Justin, we had access to Trump's X account when it was still Twitter. And he would tell us what he wanted posted and when to make sure that it went out. This is all just grotesque. It is, I'm blown away at the level of stupidity that we, the American people, have to constantly contend with on a day-to-day basis. Jim, can I throw one more thing here out at you?
Yeah.
What drives me crazy is this whole stupidity on tariffs. I don't know. Mark Rowan, by the way, of Apollo, right, who I happen to know pretty well, came out. He was on CNBC talking about how tariffs are one of the worst things that any president could ever do, and that our economy is going to tank. Why can't somebody, like if I was still in that inner circle, I was very different than so many of these folks, because I would actually push back and I would give him my honest opinion, not to be a contrarian, but to be loyal. To be loyal to somebody doesn't mean you have to say yes. What it means is that you need to tell him the truth to protect himself from himself.
Exactly. That's what loyalty is.
Somebody needs to take a piece of paper with a little red Sharpie and draw out something which is called the circular flow of economic activity. what he just does, and it sounds all, econ, maybe 2.0, 3.0. It is not. It is a very simple concept where just because China is manufacturing the goods, think about the number of hands that it touches before it ultimately gets into the consumer's hands. How much money is generated? The money is generally not made, by the way, off of the item. It's by the transportation, by the people who stock the stuff, the wholesalers, then selling them to the big box. Everybody pays a tax on that, whether it's an income tax.
It's true. No, it's absolutely true. But the good thing though, Michael, is that we now know where Donald Trump wants to retire after leaving office. It would be his own private island near San Francisco called Alcatraz. I don't know if you heard. Trump said apparently he wants to reopen Alcatraz. He's ordered several federal agencies to rebuild and reopen Alcatraz, the infamous federal penitentiary that was closed in the 60s and since has become a popular tourist destination, the Washington Post reporting.
So, Jim.
So is this where Trump's going after?
No. First of all, the whole concept is as stupid can be. First and foremost, it is a museum. It is a destination. I went to Alcatraz and I was in San Francisco. Everybody does. There's a reason why they made it into a museum. First and foremost, his understanding of Bureau of Prisons. I obviously have firsthand experience in this one. His understanding is so myopic and myopically wrong. We have what's called supermax in this country, and we have quite a few of them. They're not even above ground. They're below ground. These inmates never, ever see the light of day, ever. They see light, but they don't see outside. Everything is underground. He's under this false impression that people who are in prison are committing more crimes out on the street. And that's why you need to spend how many billions to upgrade Alcatraz?
But is it because is most of his knowledge basically from like movies of the 70s and 80s? Is that, he saw the Birdman of Alcatraz. Was that Clint Eastwood?
So funny that you said that, because that's probably what gave him the idea, or maybe the Escape from Alcatraz movie may have been on, and all of a sudden now he's saying, hey, this is a great place for us to stick all of these unwanteds, these illegals like Juan's parents and so on.
It's crazy.
Jim, what's crazy is the fact that Trump has no problem with spending what will be billions and billions of dollars to upgrade Alcatraz, a place that hasn't been used in 50, 60 years.
They'd have to tear it down and rebuild it.
Well,
this is not a Trump golf course. You can't.
No. He's going to do a gut. He's doing a gut renovation, Jim. All right, like he did over at the GE building on Fifth Avenue. Let me say this: he's willing to spend billions and billions of dollars on a refurbishment of a museum that should stay exactly as is, except he's willing to cut childhood cancer research programs, Parkinson research, Alzheimer research. Also,
well, he doesn't care about any. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care.
DGAS.
Forget about the
Jim. Jim, I'm so sorry. I just did the weave. I did the weave. And I brought it right back to IDGAS.
No, I mean, forget about the Birdman of Alcatraz. He's the bird brain of Alcatraz. I mean, where does he come up with these ideas? Reopening Alcatraz? I mean, him dressed up as the Pope makes more sense than that.
No, neither of them make any sense. Let's be fair. I know, this is great Saturday Night Live fodder if it was not true and happening in real time. I'm so glad that you have this massive audience, and there's a reason why you have it. No, there's a reason why you have it, because people have to go somewhere in order to get truth. They need to go somewhere that's not, let's just say, like what happened with NBC and Kristen Welker. There were so many pushback questions that I would have been asking if, in fact, I was given the opportunity to speak.
But Michael, he would. He would never sit down with you or me, or I mean, the other thing is, it's not just the third term question on Meet the Press. When he was on with ABC last week, and he's insisting that tattoo of MS-13 on Kilmar's knuckles are real. And I don't care if it's the rest of the interview. You spend the rest of the interview saying, "No, Mr. President, that's not the MS-13 on his knuckles. That tattoo is a photoshopped image. Don't you understand?" And you just keep going back and forth and just say, "Why don't you understand that is a photo?" That's why I go back to this.
That was Terry Moran who did that interview.
I mean, Terry held his own at times, but I'm just saying,
he tried.
He tried. Please stop feeding us this line of bullshit. When you say you don't know whether you're supposed to uphold the Constitution of this country, give me a break. That is the job of the President of the United States.
You see, what I would have liked, Jim,
Yeah.
what I would have liked Kristen to do is turn around and be more emphatic in the way that you ask the follow-up question. Mr. President, can I just get you here on the record today, whatever the date was, all right, a declaratory statement that you are not going to, even if asked, accept the nomination of your party, as you have now finished at that time.
Because you and I both know. You and I both know that would be the revealing moment, because you and I both know this is not over yet. And as we were saying earlier on, now I'm doing the weave. As I said earlier in the conversation, mark this day. I'm doing the weave. May 5th is, I know, it's okay. It's no Matt Friend. May 5th is when you and I called it. He is going to say it again. He is going to float that third term thing out there. He's going to do it one more time, and he's going to start this shit all over again. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. Yeah.
And listen, we called it here. It's why I actually appreciate Michael Mondays so much. We can get so much in like a 15-minute segment or a 20-minute segment. It's so important. And I'm sort of beseeching to each and every one of the subscribers here. Please, if you're a Michael Cohen subscriber, please make sure that you subscribe to Jim Acosta. If you're a Jim Acosta, please subscribe to mine. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you the number of people.
You're both end up in Alcatraz.
That's for sure. I just spoke at Yale University for 3 days. I got back yesterday. I spoke to 7 different groups: undergraduates, graduates. I spoke to the board and to alumni. Right? I did 7 of these things. I got to tell you, the number of people who came over to me and said to me, and I get this all the time in the streets too, Michael, what can we do to help? Yeah. What can we do? And there's really only one thing that at this present moment you can do. Subscribe. Join the conversation. Join the community.
That's a great idea. No, that's a great support independent media. You're absolutely right. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. All right. Well, apparently we got one comment that came from a viewer that says that Trump knows Photoshop. Look at the pics he puts out. That's very true. I have to think,
Genius.
The makeup, the hair stuff. There's some photoshopping going on there. Michael, great to see you.
Great to see you too, Jim.
Right. We'll be the Birdmen of Alcatraz.
Exactly.
Good to see you, buddy.
Later, brother.
All right. And then Michael and I can do the sequel, Escape from Alcatraz. We'll do the Substack version of that from live from Alcatraz. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching this Monday. My thanks to Virginia Senator Mark Warner. We got some really interesting candid responses from him during that interview, and my heart just goes out to Juan Lima and his family. Thank you so much, Juan, for spending time with us. Of course, Michael Cohen as well. But there are Juan's parents right there. Sandra and Osne are Juan's parents. They were scooped up off the street, placed in indefinite detention by ICE, by plainclothes officers with ICE. And Juan has no idea what is happening to them. Can you imagine if these were your parents? You came over here as a baby, 8 months old, live in this country for 25, 26 years. And one day, because of a change in the administration, ICE officers show up, scoop your parents up off the street, no due process, don't go in front of a judge. They're dumped in a detention center in Georgia, and he has no idea when they're getting out. And I asked the question, I asked it earlier, I'm going to ask it again to end this program. Is this who we are? Is this America? Is this who we want to be? Something to think about. Thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate it. Still reporting from Washington. I'm Jim Acosta. Have a good night.